All right, so self-esteem. How do you stay grounded, unshakable during times where shit hits the fan or like you don't get the results that you want? Well, basically the outer feedback doesn't really match with what you would like to receive. So I see this with even like my advanced clients, the 6 and the 7 figure guys, and like there's this one guy, he's top notch in his domain. He's into Web3 world. He has a DeFi company there, multiple 7 figures guy. And when we started to work together, like he was just fighting and pushing through it. And the main challenge that he had at the beginning was like, okay, how do I make this work? And we started to dig a little bit, like, okay, well, what is not fluid here? Well, like his associate left him. Pretty much everything was going against him. He was fighting against the current, like had a hard time to find the investors, had a hard time to negotiate with the team, had a hard time to synchronize with the team. Like pretty much one of these moments where like you just kind of feel that the whole universe is against you. And we all have this moment. So I started to dig a little bit and see, okay, so what's the problem with all this? And he's like, well, I can't advance into my project. Okay, and what's the problem if you can't advance in the project? Well, the project risks to fail. And what's the problem if the project is going to fail? Well, then I'm going to be a failure. And what's the problem if you're going to be a failure? And then like it's get a little bit emotional and we see like, well, fear of being alone, fear of not being accepted, fear of being rejected. And usually when you have this crazy need to perform constantly, and usually when you have like this attachment to results and to performance, usually it's because somewhere along the way you associated that your personal value is directly correlated with like the results that you produce and the performance that you have. And there's some truth to that, like the world works that way. Problem is that like chances are you attached your whole identity to the results and the performance that you have. And you created this kind of like an avatar that it's not really you, but it's like a persona that was constantly validated by the exterior of like, from the parents, from the society, from the companies or the projects you were working on. And you just amplified the performance of this avatar to be the best version of itself. And you would like that to be you. And maybe this doesn't make sense for now, but just hang on for a minute. You would like this avatar to be you, and you think it's you, but it's not really. Because if it was, you wouldn't be afraid. So, in order for this avatar to exist, it constantly needs feedback from the outer world that, yeah, you're doing good. You're having the results that you want, like you're performant, you're top G. It constantly needs this validation that it's okay and he's doing something right. So usually when you have a hard time with failure, or usually when the outer results or outer feedback kind of impact you in a deeper way or destabilizes you, is because you've just created that front picture of who you would like to be, but who you're not sure that you are. And that feedback destabilizes your self-image. So we get back to like self-esteem. It's basically just the image that you have about yourself. And what is that? Because like a lot of people talk about like self-esteem and self-image, but what it really is, it means knowing deeply inside yourself who the fuck you are. And that goes with accepting the parts of you that are not sexy, that are like completely unattractive. And to give you an example, let's just say that I'm coming to you and I assume you don't have a blue hair. But let's just say I'm coming to you and I'm saying, hey, you're very ugly with your blue hair. What would that make you feel? Would you feel offended anyway? Chances are not. Why? Because it's not true, hopefully. So when something is really not true, it doesn't affect you because you know it's not true. So if something from exterior affects you, it's for two reasons. Either it is true, either you're afraid for it to be true. And this goes back to this like avatar that I was talking about that you created. So let's just say growing up, you're constantly rewarded for bringing good results, performing well in some kind of sports, or like having good grades, or like being the popular kid. And you've been rejected when you're like weak, or when you were less performant, or when you are not the best. You associate directly that unperformance with pain. So you want to avoid that. So you still have that in your subconscious. So growing up, you still hang on to that pain. And most of the time, we're just afraid of being something that we don't want to be. And we prefer lying to ourselves and having this avatar and trying to get this outer feedback constantly to prove us, hey, we're doing it right, we're good, we're in a good position, rather than just going and saying, okay, who the fuck am I? And having that core confidence. And that's an uncomfortable process. It's very uncomfortable. Because the truth is, there's a dose of everything that is inevitable. And all of us, in some way, shape, or form, at a certain degree, we're failures, we're losers, we're fucked up, we're not good enough. Rejection, abandonment, all of that like bad shit is inevitable in some degree. And what creates a hard time and suffering is trying to avoid that and basically fighting with the outer world to change the outcome so we don't get rejected, so we don't feel that we're losers, so we don't feel that our self-worth is attacked. And a great example to illustrate this is sales. Because like the way I discovered this was through teaching sales. I was teaching high ticket closing like 2.5 years ago, and I just bumped into this shit. Because I've seen it like tens of times. People knew what to say, knew how to dig, knew how to handle the objections. They just knew the process, but they didn't apply it properly. So it's like, why don't you apply it? And like I was listening to their calls, and there was constantly like, maybe they would dig down 3, 4, 5 layers and then just stop. Maybe just like handle the objection a little bit and then they just stop. So I was like, why? So one day I was like, okay, let's put this whole sales philosophy on the side and let's just talk sincerely here. What happens? And we dig down a little bit and we see like behind that, there was a fear. There was the fear that I'm going to be perceived as a bad person, as a salesperson that doesn't care about the other. Okay. And I've seen this like constantly. People that were not applying what they knew they should apply it because they were afraid that they're going to be judged. They were afraid that they're going to be rejected. They were afraid that the person is going to perceive themselves some way or somehow. And I also seen this tens of times where coaches that struggle to make their first sale, beginners come and they didn't make a sale for like a month, 2 months, or even 3 months. Like we do one coaching session. And we go, like, we don't even look at the call. We just dig down and see, okay, what is the fear behind it? And we do like an emotional release. And boom, 24 hours, 48 hours later, it just closes. Why? Because like all of a sudden, the attachment to result is you're detached. And here's the big point, because attachment, people can feel attachment. It's like when you want to try to pick up a girl, and like you're in a club. Like, if you have that neediness, she's going to feel it, and in consequence, she's going to reject you. Because, like, we don't like to feel that somebody wants to take us, like, something from us. And usually, when we are attached to something, we want to take something from the other. Some kind of validation, some kind of feedback, positive feedback. So, we're going into that interaction with an energy of, like, I want to take, so I can feel good about myself. And maybe the other doesn't perceive it this way, but he perceives and he kind of feels that you want something from him. And I think we all had this experience with like being with someone and you just feel that that guy or that girl, like he just needs your validation or like he needs your feedback. And that's kind of just like repulsing, like you don't want to be with that person. And it's because we naturally want to protect ourselves from like bloodsuckers, from vampires, from people that want to take something from us. So when the coaches that I'm talking about my past clients were letting go of this attachment to the result and were letting go of the fear to be perceived in somehow, boom, all of a sudden they close. Because all that energy that they were using before to fight, like this conflict inside of, I don't want to be perceived that way, I don't want to be judged that way, because like all this is lost energy. You're just fighting yourself inside of yourself. And you're not fully focused in the present moment with the other person. All of a sudden, all that energy they were able to use on the person, they were able to be detached from the result, and magically it worked. And to get back from the client I was talking in the beginning of the first video, once we went down and we let go of the fear of being alone, rejected, and being a loser, not good enough, all of a sudden everything started to move in the right direction. Now, why do we have all these fears and all these setbacks and all these moments where it's not fluid and you have to fight for it and all this pressure? It's because bottom line is we don't really know who we are. And this sounds kind of cheesy and maybe like woo-woo, but that's the main thing. Because everything that you're sure and crystal clear about is not going to affect you. Everything that you're not sure or you have a question mark on, that's going to affect you. And that creates vulnerability. And usually we create this fantasy that we are like at a certain level, that we like have a certain version of ourselves. And we're afraid that the reality is that we're much lower. The thing is that if you're not sure about this, big chances that you are that much lower version. And we have the illusion that we're kind of having like a setback when the truth is we never evolved in the first place. And the philosophy I'm giving you here is like, look, everything that creates fear, discomfort, or doubt inside yourself, it's something that you're not sure and clear about on yourself, about your identity. And you can either run from it, or you can just like sit and think, okay, what is the worst thing here? Like, let's just say the client says no, or I don't close this deal, or that chick rejects me. What's the worst that can happen? Well, I'm gonna fail. And so what? What's the problem if I fail? Well, I'm not good enough, or I'm a failure, or whatever. And that's what we want to run away from, because we're afraid that because of this feedback, that's who we are. We're a failure, we're not good enough, and so on and so forth. And look, it might be true, or you might just be afraid for it to be true. And usually it's a little bit of both. But in case it is true, well, you accepted it. And now you can either change it or just leave it like that. So it doesn't affect you anymore. Because if you first step to change, accept that you have a problem. And once you accept that you have that problem, you can start working on it. So it doesn't bother you anymore when the exterior gives you that feedback. And in the case where it's not true, cool. One problem less to worry about. So you're more free. So both cases, like, it's uncomfortable. But the best choice is just to go there and see, okay, what am I afraid here? What am I afraid that will come up to the surface here? And just go and work on that. How do you do this precisely? It's a topic for another video, but it's not, you're not gonna do it like, you're not gonna think your way through it. And you're not gonna like try to persuade yourself into like changing this. It's more of like an emotional work that you can do through a bunch of techniques, meditation, brief work, name it. But it all comes down to just feeling, because you cannot solve an emotional problem with logic. It's like trying to solve a mathematic problem that is written in Chinese with English. You can't do it. You have to shut down the brain and just go into deeper states where you just feel it and allow your body to let go of that. And if you're interested, shoot me a message. I'll do a video about that. Talk to you soon.